Yes, you are better than Peterbot, and here's why. Peterbot starts this fight from a terrible angle and should know the players behind the door. Knowing this, the player ends up shooting him. He decides not to get any counter damage and decides, you know what, let me just waste mats and go for a piece I ain't getting. The player retreats backing off. Pete pressures on the other side and tries to go for a double edit on him despite the fact he doesn't even have time for that, and the player is protected by their own ramp. Pete can quite clearly see earlier. After this, he forgets that he doesn't have infinite mats and loses height and is now playing in zero build. To his credit, he does the correct thing and look for any angles to hit his opponent from out, so he does a very good job at making sure there are no angles. Now Pete does well and continues this well, and eventually the player just gets too impatient and ruins all that good work of just jumping down and goes for a 50-50 and gets killed. After that, there isn't really much to break down here. He gets third partied and gets absolutely destroyed. I'm struggling to remember who the actual pro is here because Spirit does everything well here and ends up killing Pete. Now I feel bad for Poyo here because Pete lands on a dead-eye off spawn and decides that this player has to be eliminated. But this still applies even when Poyo is knocked, and he has to make sure he doesn't die and throw the game dying off spawn and getting 0 points. Instead, he decides to keep chasing the player and ends up dying to their duo, making a really dumb play trying to hide behind glass walls. But in his defense, Poyo did die first. Let's see a situation where that isn't a real factor. In this match, Pete is looting off up spawn, but Poyo is having to deal with two players attacking him. Instead of helping him, he simply just loots up, which isn't a bad thing. However, Pete has a very egoist playstyle, and instead of using mats to help Poyo and protect him since he's one shot, he decides to instead try to 2v1, getting a kill with the Enforcer AR. Now, everything else he does here is good and creates good angles, but the fighting meta is so much different than to Chapter 6 and Chapter 5, where he was much better. What Pete should have done is make it so that when a player tries to face through, he gets pre-fired, but he doesn't, ends up getting killed and dies to a face. Now here's me landing at the same location and winning the off-spawn fight against two players within 20 seconds and not even using a drop map because I never land here. In this fight here, Peterbot is above a duo and is looking to pressure from above. After taking the cone, a common thing players do is try to make an edit while the pickaxe is still out, so Pete baits this edit and then tries again. However, he gets baited instead and takes 58 damage. He then drops down and tries to damage the other player, taking damage instead. After popping a mini, he then tries to pressure from a different angle while the duo is distracted by Poyo. He goes around the back, creating a pinch, allowing them to easily just close in and win the fight. Funnily enough, however, despite Pete getting both kills, Poyo's doing most of the work here, but I'll get back to that soon. Much like this fight where Pete ends up landing one shot the entire fight despite Poyo going and killing his own player that he was fighting. Breaking down what else happens here, Peterbot ends up getting out-traded, so he ends up having to go and pop 2 minutes and look round the back of the fight, so that he ends up changing location and then it's more difficult to fight. Now he ends up realising that he can't go and fight because he doesn't have enough health to do it, and one of the players is already knocked, so Pete just prioritises that instead. Now in the previous fight, Poyo breaks the shield of both players and was actually doing most of the pressure in the entire fight. This results in both players getting weak, but Pete getting the elims despite Poyo doing the bulk of the work. As you see right here, Poyo ends up having to sneak around and protect himself from the duo that's to his right. This then means that he's doing most of the pressure, cracking the shield of both players and allowing Pete to then get the kills. He has to also make sure that he doesn't get damaged by the other duo in this fight as well either. Now in this fight here, Poyo's fighting both of the players at the same time doing a 2v1. He knocks one and falls back to recover before getting back into the fight. And what is Peterbot doing? Absolutely nothing, because this is the fight from before. Yeah, this guy does absolutely nothing. Now we're in the endgame, where Poyo is the fragger and IGL while Pete plays support and tops. Poyo immediately manages to kill a player and Pete then tops into circle. Now Poyo does his job as a fragger perfectly and makes sure he can look for any kills and refreshes that he can get. However, Pete ends up topping into Storm, and this is the downfall of their game. Poyo takes a ton of Storm damage because of this, and it forces him to be further behind Pete because he has to heal up and be unable to assist him in trying to take height. This is not even the right play either, considering how shambles they are. But regardless, they're now forced into a scuffle for height, which only really greased both of their games, and Poyo effectively plays as a solo and is forced to die to full damage. Now, I'm just going to show you what Pete does, and this proves that you are better than him. Thank you for watching. Check out why Clix is the best player in the world. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.